It started, as these things often do, with something small. Insignificant, even a sticker. Well, technically about a dozen stickers, all slapped across various parts of my property in a way that made them look both official and ugly as sin. Orange, big, bold numbers. Barcodes, ugly adhesive squares that stuck out like neon warnings in an otherwise quiet neighborhood lined with manicured lawns, and HOA regulations thicker than a phone book. To anyone driving past, my house must have looked like a condemned building, or at least a property tangled in some kind of bureaucratic hell. In truth, those stickers meant something very different. They weren't a punishment. They were a shield, a legal requirement, issued after a lengthy, nasty court battle with the HOA itself. A battle I had won in court with legal documents thicker than Karen's wine fridge manual. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how it all began. I moved to this neighborhood 4 years ago. Back then, I was freshly divorced, rebuilding my life, and honestly just wanted somewhere peaceful to exist without being micromanaged. I bought the house for its yard, half an acre, fully fenced, room enough for my dog, my hobbies, and a garden I had every intention of planting once life settled down. I made 2 mistakes within my first month. First, I ignored the HOA's welcome packet. You know the kind. 50 pages of rules disguised as neighborly advice, typed in Comic Sans like someone thought they were being friendly. I skimmed it, signed what I had to, and didn't think much of it. My fault. But honestly, who reads every page of that nonsense? Second mistake, I parked my truck in my own driveway. Overnight, more than once. Apparently, this was a declaration of war. The first letter arrived in my mailbox like a shot across the bow. Your vehicle does not comply with HOA appearance standards. No explanation, no specifics. Just that vague, passive-aggressive tone that drips from every HOA communication like syrup off a bad pancake. I ignored it. The second letter was firmer. The third threatened fines. By the time I attended my first HOA meeting, invited via notice that might as well have been nailed to my door, I'd already been labeled non-compliant. That's when I met Karen. Karen wasn't her real name, of course. Her real name was something common enough. Sharon or Susan or Deborah, something like that. But she embodied the spirit of Karen so perfectly that her given name didn't matter. Clipboard always in hand. A haircut sharp enough to slice glass. Sunglasses worn even indoors. And an attitude that suggested she'd been appointed by the heavens themselves to patrol suburban compliance. She sat at the head of the HOA board, flanked by 2 other middle-aged sentinels who nodded at everything she said like bobbleheads and cardigans. That first meeting wasn't a conversation. It was a monologue about standards, about property values, about how people like me, newcomers with loud trucks and creative landscaping ideas, threatened the delicate balance of their precious community. I listened, I smiled, I nodded, and I kept parking my truck. That's when the stickers started. At first, it was just one, bright orange, slapped onto my windshield at some ungodly hour. Violation notice, it screamed. Non-compliant vehicle, subject to removal. No date, no signature, no legal authority. Just Karen's unofficial brand of intimidation disguised as procedure. I peeled it off, tossed in the trash, and thought little of it. The next day, another one appeared. Then 2. Then 4. Different spots. Different wording. All the same ugly color. And all clearly designed to make a point. Not to follow any actual legal process. Neighbors noticed. They whispered. Some laughed. Others avoided eye contact. Karen, meanwhile, patrolled by daily. Sometimes twice. Clipboard in hand. Sunglasses perched like armor, watching. Judging. Waiting. It escalated faster than I expected. A formal complaint arrived in my mailbox, this time typed on HOA letterhead and signed by Karen herself. Attached was a list of violations, all related to my truck, my yard, my unapproved signage, which hilariously referred to a beware dog signed small in my mailbox, and, here's the kicker, unauthorized use of stickers. Yes, the very stickers they themselves were applying. That's when I stopped smiling. I hired a lawyer. Turns out, HOAs can overreach. A lot, and mine had been doing so for years. Fining residents illegally, harassing those who push back, ignoring state ordinances in favor of their own little bylaws, written decades ago and never updated to reflect actual legal standing. My lawyer was thrilled. Cases like this? Easy wins. We filed. We fought. It took months. Depositions. Mediation. Court dates rescheduled because Karen had prior obligations read. A cruise. But in the end, we won. Not just for me, but in a way that sent ripples through the entire neighborhood. The court issued an order. My property, my vehicle, my signs, all explicitly protected under state law. The stickers? Court mandated now. Proof, in bright orange, that my rights have been violated and were now officially recognized as protected. Karen hated it, which brings us back to the beginning. One sunny Tuesday. I came home to find Karen herself crouched by my fence, peeling the stickers off with manicured fingernails and a look of pure, concentrated spite. Not just peeling, scraping, scratching, trying to remove every trace, as if doing so would erase the court's ruling, the history, and her own failure. She didn't see me watching from the sidewalk. I let her finish. She stood, satisfied, crumpling the stickers in her fists like trophies, and turned straight into the lens of my phone camera. Smile, I said, "You're violating a court order." Her face went pale beneath layers of expensive foundation. Neighbors watched from porches, behind curtains, phones in hand. Karen's power wasn't just slipping. It was crumbling, live and in color. She sputtered. She threatened. She demanded I delete the footage. I didn't. I sent it straight to my lawyer, who sent it straight to the judge. Contempt of court, after all, isn't just a fancy phrase. It's enforceable. Fines. Potential jail time. HOA board privileges revoked. Karen had no idea what she'd just done, but she was about to find out. Karen's mistake wasn't just a petty HOA tantrum anymore. It had become something legal, something with teeth. I knew it. My lawyer knew it. Even the judge, when he reviewed the footage, couldn't suppress a smirk, according to my lawyer's assistant, who happened to sit in on the hearing. But Karen? Karen thought she still had the upper hand. Or at least, she acted like it. That's the thing with people like her. Authority, even the pretend kind granted by a neighborhood committee, seeps into the bones over time. It rots perspective. It convinces people they're invincible because they've gotten away with it so long no one remembers a time they didn't run the show. Except now, the show wasn't hers to run anymore. 2 days after I sent the footage to my lawyer, Karen doubled down. A notice appeared on my door. Not mailed, not placed gently in my mailbox. Taped aggressively across the glass like she wanted the adhesive to peel the paint with it. Another violation. Handwritten this time, in furious, slanted letters that barely disguise her rage beneath a thin veil of fake politeness. Your failure to comply with neighborhood standards continues to cause distress among the HOA and your fellow residents. Immediate removal of all unauthorized signage and stickers is required. Non-compliance will result in further action, including potential removal of offending materials by HOA personnel. I laughed, out loud, right there on my porch with the notice still fluttering under my hand. Further action? Huh? Like what? More illegal sticker removal? Another round of harassment, thinly disguised as enforcement? My lawyer laughed too when I sent him a picture. That's not just a violation of your court order. It's harassment. Again, stack it up, we're going back to court. She's practically handing you a bigger win every day. And Karen kept handing me ammunition like it was Halloween candy. That weekend, HOA Karen wasn't content with passive-aggressive letters or stealthy sticker peels. She showed up in person, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched despite the cloudy sky, backup in tow, 2 board members, neither of whom met my eye as they trailed behind her like reluctant storm clouds. She didn't come to talk. She came to perform, loudly, publicly, for the benefit of the neighborhood's watching eyes peeking through blinds and over fences. "This has gone on long enough," she announced, planting herself at the foot of my driveway like she owned the concrete beneath her orthopedic sandals. "We've received numerous complaints about the state of your property, about these stickers, about your vehicle. about your refusal to maintain neighborhood standards. I could have pointed out, again, that my vehicle was legally parked, my yard was trimmed to regulation length, and those stickers were literally court-order protection against further harassment. But I didn't need to, because I wasn't the only one recording this time. Phones appeared from porches, from sidewalks, from behind bushes where neighbors pretended to trim hedges they'd already trimmed last week. Karen's audience wasn't just me anymore. It was everyone she'd lorded over for years, and the performance wasn't playing well. Still, she pressed on. If you refuse to comply, she said, the HOA will be forced to take action. Legal action. Karen, I said, smiling in a way that was all teeth and no warmth. You already did, and you lost. Her jaw tightened. Her clipboard twitched. You've misunderstood the situation. No, I said. You have. I turned to her entourage. You're aware this is harassment now, right? That those stickers were court-mandated after your first illegal removal? That my lawyer's watching this unfold in real time? Hello, Alan. I waved at my phone. My lawyer, on the other end of the live feed, waved back from his office. Karen's color drained faster than her reputation. I'm giving you one final warning, she snapped. And I'm giving you one final opportunity to walk away before you end up explaining this to a judge. Again, neighbors whispered, phones recorded. Someone coughed in what might have been an attempt to cover laughter. Karen's backup peeled off first. One board member muttering something about not wanting to be involved. The other following a glance over his shoulder that said, plainly, I told you this was a bad idea. Karen stood alone. For a heartbeat, she looked almost lost, like the ground she'd stood on for so long had shifted beneath her without warning, like she couldn't quite grasp how she'd gone from queen of the cul-de-sac to cautionary tale on next door. Then her jaw set, her sunglasses glinted, and she stormed off without another word, her clipboard swinging wildly with each furious step. But it wasn't over. Not yet. That night, an email arrived. HOA letterhead. Official language. Notice of emergency HOA board meeting. Scheduled within 48 hours. Agenda. Discussion of neighborhood compliance and procedures. Translation? Karen was rallying her troops. I RSVP'd. Politely. Legally. And I brought my lawyer. When we walked into that cramped, beige community center room. Folding chairs, stale coffee, a whiteboard with mission statement written in fading marker. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. The rest of the board looked tired, resigned, like people who knew they'd been dragged into a battle they had no hope of winning, but couldn't admit it out loud. Karen opened the meeting with a speech, a long one, about standards, about tradition, about how neighborhoods were built on cooperation and respect, and how certain residents refused to uphold those sacred values. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. When she finally paused for breath, my lawyer stood, calm, professional, briefcase in hand. He outlined the court's previous ruling, the protections granted to me, the legal consequences already stacking up against Karen and the HOA for their continued harassment. He read, aloud, the relevant sections of state law regarding property rights, harassment, and misuse of HOA authority. He ended with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You are, right now, in direct violation of a court order. Again, my client has no wish to escalate this unnecessarily. However, we are fully prepared to do so, publicly, legally, and with significant financial repercussions for this board and its members individually. Silence. Thick, awkward, uncomfortable enough to make the folding chairs creak under the weight of bodies, suddenly unsure how to sit. Karen tried to salvage her authority. She talked about fines, about policy, about how one person's defiance sets a dangerous precedent. My lawyer raised a hand. No, he said, your defiance set this precedent. My client is merely protecting himself, with the law on his side. Minutes later, the board voted, unanimously, not just to cease all actions against me, but to issue a formal apology, in writing, filed with the court, signed by Karen herself. It was over, officially, legally. Finally, I walked out of that meeting lighter than I'd felt in months. Karen didn't walk out at all. She stayed behind, slumped in her chair, staring at her clipboard like it had betrayed her. I almost felt bad. Almost. Things didn't settle down immediately. Not with people like Karen. Not in neighborhoods where pride is as deeply rooted as the oak trees lining the sidewalks. Sure, the board had voted. Sure, the apologies were sent. I received mine in the mail, hand-delivered in a plain white envelope like some kind of ceasefire flag, complete with Karen's signature trembling at the bottom like it had been dragged there against her will. The language was stiff. Legal. We recognize our previous actions were an error, and so on. No acknowledgement of the harassment. No mention of the stickers. No hint of the embarrassment Karen must have felt writing it. But the message was clear. Leave this man alone. He's untouchable now. You'd think that would be the end of it. You'd think wrong. Because humiliation curdles in people like Karen. It doesn't dissolve. It doesn't fade. It thickens into resentment and seeps into everything they do, poisoning every future interaction. And while she might not have had the legal authority to target me anymore, she still had her little kingdom, her meetings, her clipboard, her whispers. I noticed at first at the next HOA meeting. Officially, the matter was closed. My name wasn't on the agenda. But Karen's glances said otherwise. The way she avoided looking at me. The way she spoke louder than necessary, emphasized words like compliance and community responsibility, as if daring anyone, to challenge her again. Nobody did. Not openly. But whispers travel. Fast. I started hearing things from neighbors who'd been neutral before, some even sympathetic to Karen's standards. Now, they rolled their eyes when her name came up. They shared stories about fines they'd paid without question, about warnings they'd received for trivial things, a garden hose left out overnight, a child's bicycle on a front lawn, about how they'd always thought, that's just how HOA works. Until now, until they realized they could fight back. I didn't set out to start a rebellion. I'm not the type. I didn't lead rallies or hand out flyers. I didn't storm the next board meeting with a list of grievances. I just lived my life, legally and peacefully, with my court-mandated stickers and my legally parked truck and my trimmed-to-regulation lawn. But change has a funny way of spreading once it starts. First, it was a neighbor across the street, Pete, who stopped by one Saturday while I was washing my truck. "Hey," he said, eyeing the stickers with a grin, "you think your lawyer could take a look at this?" He held up his latest violation notice for having unauthorized holiday decorations still visible on his porch. It was February. The decoration in question was a small wreath, not lit, not festive, just there. I gave him my lawyer's number. Then it was the Johnsons 2 doors down. Their infraction involved the flower bed, not the flowers, the border stones, which apparently didn't meet HOA approval because they clashed with the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. Whatever that meant. Word spread. Cases mounted. Letters arrived. Not from Karen, but from lawyers representing homeowners no longer willing to swallow petty harassment disguised as governance. Karen's power cracked further with each one. But the final blow didn't come from lawsuits or meetings. It came from Karen herself, from a rot that pride had planted years ago and finally blossomed into full, public meltdown. It started small. An argument with another board member during a meeting about whether or not someone's choice of mailbox constituted community disruption. Raised voices. Sharp words. A gavel slammed harder than necessary. Escalated to neighbors catching Karen taking photos of their homes. Not violations, just homes. Windows. Driveways. Children's toys left in yards. When confronted, she snapped that she was documenting ongoing threats to neighborhood standards. Police were called. A warning issued. Then one night, an email leaked. Not intentionally. Karen wasn't stupid enough for that. But mistakes happen. Especially when you hit reply all on a chain meant to stay within your trusted circle and accidentally include half the neighborhood. The email in question? A diatribe about certain residents who think they're above the rules because of one court ruling, and how steps must be taken to ensure compliance, even if those steps require creative solutions. Creative solutions. It spread like wildfire. Screenshots shared. Group texts exploded. Social media lit up with hashtags mocking Karen Crusade. Hashtag Stickergate trended locally. Memes appeared. My favorite featured a Photoshop Karen wielding a giant sticker like a weapon, storming a castle labeled legal boundaries. The next HOA meeting wasn't just attended. It was packed. Neighbors who'd never shown up before crammed into the community center, arms folded, faces expectant. The air buzzed with something between anticipation and glee. Karen looked different, smaller, less certain. Her clipboard was there, but it hung limply from her hand. Her sunglasses stayed perched, but behind them, her eyes darted like a cornered animal. She called the meeting to order, tried to push through the agenda, failed. One by one, residents stood, not to complain about mailboxes or lawn heights, to demand change, transparency, accountability, apologies, resignations. The board crumbled under the pressure. Some members stepped down that night. Others promised to review policies, revise bylaws, bring the HOA in line with actual law. Karen? She didn't resign. Not then. Not publicly. But she didn't run the show anymore. Her power, once absolute in this tiny suburban kingdom, was gone. In the weeks that followed, things changed. The stickers stayed. Legally required, now more a badge of victory than a scarlet letter. My truck sat proudly in its driveway, untouched. The lawn flourished. The garden grew. My neighbors smiled when they passed, stopped to chat, asked after my dog. Karen stayed indoors. The rumors varied. Some said she'd been warned by the police. Others whispered about lawsuits, about settlements, about her husband finally put his foot down after years of letting her run wild. I didn't know. I didn't ask. I didn't care, because peace had returned. Not the fake, brittle peace of silent compliance, but the real kind. The kind born from boundaries set and respected, from battles fought and won, from neighbors standing together and saying, enough. And me, I kept living, quietly, happily, legally, because sometimes the ugliest stickers make the most beautiful statements. You might think that's where things would end, me, sitting quietly victorious with my court-protected stickers while Karen faded into bitter suburban obscurity. That's what I thought, too, for a while. But people like Karen don't retire. They stew. They plot. They hunt for any gap in the armor they can wedge themselves into. And if they can't find one, well, sometimes they make one up. It started subtly. A glance here, a muttered comment there. Nothing you could report. Nothing actionable. Just presence. Lingering where she didn't belong. Walking past my house more often than necessary. Standing at the end of my driveway, clipboard in hand, jotting things down I knew weren't about me, because there was nothing left for her to find. But jotting nonetheless. Watching. It didn't bother me at first. Let her play watchdog. Let her burn her hours pacing sidewalks. She no longer ruled. Let her simmer. But then came the meeting. Not an official HOA gathering. Not even something public. This was quieter. Hush invitations. A community improvement initiative advertised only through whispers and carefully chosen emails. A gathering of concerned. Not the official board. What remained of it had learned their lesson, but Karen's loyalists, the ones still clutching their pearls over my truck and my stickers, and what they saw as the unraveling of neighborhood decency. I wasn't invited, of course, but word got to me anyway. Neighbors who'd once feared Karen now laughed with me about her antics. They forwarded the emails. They shared screenshots. They came to me with furrowed brows and said things like, "You might want to know about this." And what I found in those emails made me realize Karen wasn't done. Not really. She couldn't fight me legally anymore. Couldn't peel off stickers or summon fines. But she could rally whispers. Could stir pots. Could paint me as the villain behind closed doors and hope the neighborhood's tide turned back in her favor. According to her little committee of the fearful, I wasn't just a nuisance. I was a threat to property values, to community cohesion, to the very fabric of what this neighborhood represents. They framed it like a crusade. Karen, the self-appointed savior, standing bravely against the forces of noncompliance. Except this time, I wasn't the only target. They'd drawn up a list. Neighbors who'd supported me publicly. People who'd filed complaints about HOA harassment. Homes with unauthorized paint colors, flags, lawn decorations. Things nobody cared about until Karen needed ammunition. A witch hunt, dressed in suburbia's Sunday best. And worse, they planned to act. Not through official channels. Those were barred to them now. But through coordinated pressure. Anonymous complaints to city code enforcement. Petty calls to police about noise, about property lines, about imagined violations. Letters sent not from the HOA, but from concerned citizens. A campaign of exhaustion, designed to wear people down until they moved or fell back in line. I could have ignored it, but I didn't, because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about everyone who'd been too scared to speak up, about the quiet families who just wanted to mow their lawns without measuring the grass with a ruler first, about kids riding bikes without helmet citations, about neighbors who wanted to put up Halloween decorations without being accused of bringing down the neighborhood's resale potential. It was about stopping Karen. Fully. Finally. So, I did what Karen never expected. I fought her on her own turf. I gathered evidence. Every email, every whispered plan, every screenshot and forwarded text. Neighbors, now emboldened, shared freely. Stories poured in. Recordings. Written statements. Proof of harassment stretching back years. And I didn't go to the HOA board. I went higher. City council meetings. Local news. Attorneys who specialize in HOA abuse cases. Turns out there are more than you'd think. I compiled it all into a neat, damning package and dropped it where it would do the most damage. Karen's little cabal never saw it coming. The first sign was a letter. Not from me, but from the city. An investigation into discriminatory HOA practices, into harassment complaints, into violations of residents' rights under both state and federal law. Subpoenas followed. Interviews. Audits. Then came the news crew. Karen's house, once a symbol of HOA primness, appeared on the evening broadcast behind a reporter describing allegations of systemic abuse and targeted harassment within a suburban homeowners association. Her face wasn't shown. Her name wasn't spoken. But everyone knew. The fallout was fast. Neighbors who'd stood by her stepped back. Those who'd wavered fled. The HOA board, already gutted, dissolved entirely under legal pressure. A court-appointed mediator took over. Policies rewritten. Fines refunded. Apologies issued. Protections implemented. Karen? She vanished. Not literally. Of course. Her house still stood. Her yard still trimmed. But her clipboard disappeared. Her walk ceased. Her voice, once loud enough to echo through boardrooms and neighborhood meetings, faded to a whisper behind drawn curtains. The last time I saw her was months later. I was planting new trees along the edge of my yard, part of a neighborhood beautification project, officially sanctioned, publicly celebrated, a symbol of moving forward, of growth. Karen watched from her window, not glaring, not scowling, just watching, quiet, beaten, alone. And as I pressed soil around young roots, I realized something. She'd lost more than authority, more than power. She'd lost relevance. The thing she'd fought so hard to maintain through stickers and fines and whispered campaigns was gone, replaced by a community, by a connection, by neighbors who laughed together, helped each other, celebrated freedom from her reign. She wasn't feared anymore. She was pitted. That was the real victory. Because power fades, laws change, boards dissolve. But the memory of standing your ground, of pushing back against petty tyranny and watching it crumble, that lingers. That shapes futures. That's how neighborhoods heal. And me, I kept living, kept planting, kept smiling at neighbors who now waved without fear. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It doesn't always come with gavel strikes and headlines. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes its roots growing deep where no sticker will ever touch again. If you ever lived in a neighborhood where power was abused long enough, you understand something most people don't. True peace doesn't come from one big victory. It comes from the small moments after, the moments where nothing happens anymore. No letters. No warnings. No knock at the door about your mailbox color or the flowers you planted without proper approval. Just quiet. Just life. In the months after Karen's downfall, the neighborhood changed in ways that went beyond overturned fines or rewritten HOA policies. It wasn't about the paperwork anymore. It was about people remembering how to live like neighbors again, without fear, without suspicion, without someone like Karen lurking behind every corner with a clipboard and a smug grin. The stickers? They stayed. Court-ordered or not, they became something else entirely. Not a warning. Not a scarlet letter. A symbol. Proof that the neighborhood had survived something toxic and petty and small-minded, and come out the other side better for it. Funny thing about those stickers, at some point, people stopped noticing them as ugly. They became part of the landscape. Background noise. I kept them clean, polished, even, out of principle. Not because I had to anymore, but because I wanted to. A reminder, if only for myself, that you don't have to roll over just because someone says you should. And Karen? Well, Karen faded. Slowly, quietly. No grand exit. No moving truck in the night. She stayed. But she stopped. Stopped enforcing. Stopped watching. Stopped matching. Her house became just another house on the block. Her name, just another entry on a tax roll. If she still harbored resentment, she kept it locked behind her blinds. One day, a neighbor told me Karen had started gardening. Actual gardening. Not peeking over fences to report on someone else's flower beds. Planting her own vegetables, herbs, a sad little tomato plant at first, then a few others. I saw her once, kneeling in dirt, wearing gloves and a wide hat, focused entirely on something that wouldn't earn her power, wouldn't win her any control. Just something that grew because she cared for it. I didn't say hello. Neither did she. But in that silence, there was something like understanding, not forgiveness, not friendship, just closure. Neighbors joked about it. Imagine Karen, the woman who fined us for garden gnomes, now growing zucchini. But the jokes faded too, like the tension, like the fear. The HOA, under new leadership, reasonable people, neighbors, not dictators. Meetings became shorter, friendlier. Rules still existed. Some boundaries are necessary, but they were enforced with fairness, not malice. Violations became rarer, because people actually respected the process now. It wasn't about power anymore. It was about community. The change rippled outward. Garage sales returned. Block parties. Kids riding bikes without helmets being snatched off heads by clipboard warriors. Sidewalk chalk. Halloween decorations without 6 weeks prior approval. Freedom in small, ordinary things. I hosted a barbecue that summer. First one in years. Invitations pinned to doors, texts sent out. No agenda, no hidden motive. Just burgers, drinks, music, and conversation. People came, laughed, shared stories. Some about Karen. The infamous sticker wars had become neighborhood legend by then, but more about life. About family, about hopes bigger than property lines and lawn heights. It felt normal. It felt good. One of the newer neighbors, unaware of the history, asked about the stickers on my truck as they helped themselves to a burger. Oh, those. I smiled. Neighborhood souvenir. They laughed, took a bite, moved on, because by then, the stickers didn't need explaining. They'd done their job. They'd survived long enough to outlast the person who thought peeling them off would fix her unhappiness. And speaking of irony, I did eventually replace them, not because anyone forced me, not because Karen finally won, but because it was time. Time to let go of the battle scars and enjoy the peace they'd earned. Time to embrace a neighborhood that had healed, even if slowly, awkwardly, painfully. When I pulled the last one off, carefully, methodically, like removing stitches after wounds closed, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger. I felt done. Done fighting. Done defending. Done needing to prove anything. Just free. And freedom, in the end, isn't loud. It doesn't come with victory speeches or banners waving. It comes with silence. With Saturdays spent in the yard without looking over your shoulder. With kids laughing down the block. with neighbors waving as they pass, with knowing the next HOA meeting won't end in threats or fines, but maybe with a bake sale announcement or plans for a shared garden plot. Freedom comes when you realize you've stopped thinking about Karen altogether, because people like her only win when you let them live in your head. And now, she didn't live there anymore. If anything, she was busy tending her tomatoes. And me, I was busy living.